Welcome to Health Breakthroughs with Dr. James Weiner, sponsored by Dr. Weiner's Wellness Center, located at 2419 Baldwick Road, Pittsburgh, just minutes off the Green Tree exit of I-376. If you have a health question for Dr. Weiner, call 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262.
Now, there are a few medical doctors in the country that understand that diet and nutrition is not really an alternative medical approach. It actually is the foundation of health. And we have one of those doctors today. He's Dr. Edwin Lee. Some of you may have heard him speak a couple years ago at our Weiner Wellness Week. He's from Orlando, Florida, and a specialist in endocrinology. Dr. Lee, I appreciate you getting up and getting on the program with us.
Well, thank you, Dr. Weiner. It's my pleasure.
We've done shows before, and now you have written a number of new books since last we talked. You're a prolific author. I don't know how you fit everything in between your practice, your family, speaking around the country on various unique approaches for health. And you have this book here that we're going to talk about in a minute. It's called Your Amazing Heart. It's sort of geared to children, but I think it's very revelatory for adults as well. But first, I'd like people to know about your background. Maybe you can tell us something about your professional background.
Sure, Dr. Weiner. I'm actually was born in the United States and grew up in Pennsylvania. I grew up on the other side of Pittsburgh. Actually, it's a town called Allentown, Pennsylvania. Went to college at State University in New York, Stony Brook, majored in applied mathematics and statistics. Went to a U.S. medical school called Medical College of Pennsylvania, which is now called Drexel. And then I did my 3 years internal medicine at the Lehigh Valley Hospital, where I actually was born at. And then
that was an internship.
Yes, well, internship and residency, internal medicine. And then I did 2 fellowships, since I love to do both. One was critical care medicine, and the other one was endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism. And I did both of them at University of Pittsburgh. That's how my connection with Pittsburgh is.
Oh, so you actually lived here?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I lived there for, actually I stayed there for about 4 years.
Do you know the exact dates when that happened?
Yeah, well, yes. Let's see. I'll tell you a little later. But
well, I was just trying to figure it out because I used to teach over there. I used to teach various classes over there, but that was in the 70s. That was probably before you were there.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like, I think in the 90s. So.
Okay.
Anyway, then I had a job offer back in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where where I grew up, and my father, he'll deny this, he said, I never told you this, but he told me, don't come back, go someplace nice so we can visit you in the winter. So I interviewed all over the country and found a nice little place in Winter Haven, Florida. They never had an endocrinologist, and I basically started there and had a very busy practice, but over time I realized that I saw the medical system broken, and I actually wanted to educate rather than just treat chronic disease. So I went to a conference in Vegas and fell in love with anti-aging or nutritional medicine or age management. And
in fact, I'm going out to that conference this week.
That's right. And I just spoke at the recent one. There's a couple different anti-aging conferences or age management conferences, and I was just in Vegas end of October, early November, and but I won't be the one. I won't be at the conference that you'll be at. But then I started my own practice here at the Institute for Hormonal Balance in Orlando, Florida, in 1998, and 2008. Sorry, 2008, peak of the recession, and I've been here ever since. So, and I've written 3 books. The book that we're going to be talking about, Your Amazing Heart, took actually about 2 years to write, and it was. I have to also give credit to the 2 other authors. One is Jim Huth, who's the co-editor, co-author, and the second one is Brian Burright, who did the illustration but also the animation in the ebook version. And Brian actually has a background in working on movie sets, and he was on the movie set Avatar for 3 years. So, worked with James Cameron.
Well, that's pretty impressive.
My background
that was a very impressive animation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you've seen Avatar, it's just like, wow. So.
Hey, and what are the names of two other books?
Well, the other book I wrote is called Feel Good, Look Younger, Reversing Tiredness Through Hormonal Balance, and now it's on the second edition. And the second book is called Your Best Investment, Secrets to a Healthy Body and Mind. And both of those books you can probably get through Dr. Weiner's office and also on Amazon.com. But Your Amazing Heart, we'll talk more about that, is not available on Amazon until it'll be available on February 18th, 2014.
And I know you'll be sending us out copies. I actually wanted to do this interview beforehand, but it's what we call an evergreen show that we'll repeat numerous times because, as you know, I'm on radio on these two stations about 26, 27 hours a week at various times, various days. So it'll run through our schedule, and people who are used to listening to my program at different times in the morning or evening or afternoon, weekends will be able to hear it. I wanted to go a little more into how people can contact you, your address of your clinic, the name of the clinic, and also contact information.
Sure. A really great website to get a lot of information about what I do. And I do have patients from across the country who come to see me, not only in the U.S. but outside the United States.
Now, I hate to interrupt, but your voice is trailing. Are you speaking into the whatever microphone you have there the whole time? Because parts of your sentence
a little louder.
Trailing off, yeah.
Okay. So I actually see people outside the United States, but if you would check out the website, www.dredwinlee.com, or my office is in Orlando, Florida, but the phone number at the office is 407-363-9665. And
407-363-9775.
No, 9665.
I'm sorry, 9665. I wrote it right, but I said it wrong. 363-9665. And it's Edwin Lee, L-E-E, in case I wonder how to spell your name, just like the General Robert E. Lee. This is Edwin Lee, Dr. Edwin Lee, 407-363-9665, and the website's dredwinlee.com. Okay, so would you like to talk about this book? Then maybe we'll get into the other books. This book I found delightful because it's easy to read. You know, I have adult friends who tell me they don't like to read, and I think it's because the younger generation is very visual, and they're used to watching television and movies and videos, and so this is a great book, I think, not only for children but for adults, even though it's simply written so it's very well understood by children. And I love the quote in the beginning from Dr. Seuss. I got to read this. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. I mean, I think that's an amazing quote that people need to realize empowerment, and I think that's what you or I are all about, is empowering the patient to understand there's a lot they can do for themselves for health and get away from this passive paradigm that has dominated modern medicine. When you said things were broken in modern medicine, I think that's one of the things where the doctors have limited themselves to surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, drugs, and the patient doesn't realize, maybe the doctor doesn't realize, that lifestyle is the main determinant of one's health, as I mentioned before. So if we educate the patient, then they can actually follow a healthy lifestyle and probably avoid a lot of the pitfalls that befall many Americans. So I love this quote. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. So why did you end up writing a book that ostensibly is geared towards children? Well,
my passion now is to educate the youth because I see that we have to start at a younger age. And a lot of these diseases are preventable. Fortunately, our school system's not doing a good job in terms of teaching good health. So I was researching on how many children's books there are on health, and I have not found one book that's actually exciting to read, and that was also educational. I mean, there's a lot of educational books there, but it's just so boring. It's like a textbook. So I took on this project to teach. I wanted to basically educate the youth, especially my children, although I think they're relatively healthy, but I'd like to just show some simple guidelines on how to have a healthy body, and especially the heart. And this is kind of like the series of books that I like to start off, and the first book is that we completed is Your Amazing Heart. And what's really exciting, Dr. Weiner, is that this book won the Moonbeam Children's Book Award on kids' health. It was an independent book competition, and I think there was like over 6 or 7 different countries that expanded, and actually I'm really proud that we're a recipient of this award. So I really want to take it out as a grassroots effort to just teach the point that heart disease is preventable. The number one killer that I see is heart disease. And you did mention prescription medications, but I mean, I think that heart disease...
Yeah, prescriptions are third. Heart disease is number one.
Yeah, okay. I thought you said...
No, heart disease number one, cancer number two, properly prescribed, quote-unquote, properly prescribed medications number three.
I misheard that. But anyway, heart disease is preventable, and we have to start at a younger age. And the sad fact is that if a child is overweight by 5th grade, I think there's a statistics that shows that if one of the parent is also overweight, that the child will be overweight, has an 80% chance of being overweight as an adult. And I actually read this book in my kids' school, and it's a public school, and I actually was really touched when this young kid who's slightly overweight looked at me and he said, "Dr. Lee, I have a sugar problem. I need this book. I want to have a healthy heart." And it was really touching when he said that. And it's just really, I really want to show the kids what happens in the future if you don't take care of your body, and especially if you eat too much sugar. And that's the main problem that I see when I treat my adult patients, is a lot of my patients have this sugar addiction, and they don't exercise and they don't eat healthy. So, and what happens is you get these chronic diseases. And if you give the body the right nutrients, the right path, the body can heal itself.
Well, that's the concept, is that the diseases are largely caused by bad diet, and if you change to a good diet, the body can heal itself. I mean, I guess that's one of my core principles that I'm teaching people. And I'll tell you what amazes me is how many adults come in that have this sugar addiction, and they consume a lot of soda pop, which has phosphoric and carbonic acid, as well as a lot of sugar, or they're using aspartame, which is an artificial sugar that's probably even worse than sugar. And it's amazing how many adults are like this. And at first I thought, well, I don't know how receptive children are going to be because it seems very vague to them that one day they're going to get sick because they're young and most of them are healthy, although an alarming amount of them are overweight now, as you say. But then I start thinking that their parents, I mean, I'm seeing the parents, I do see children as well, the parents in their 30s and 40s are having serious problems. And so I think the kids can already see now, because so many people that are relatively young adults, are having serious health problems as a consequence of our poor lifestyle, that these kids now probably can relate to these health problems, because it's not just their grandparents who might be in their 60s, 70s, or 80s that are having these problems, but it's their parents in their 20s, 30s, and 40s having these problems.
Exactly. And I see that too. And the thing is that who's teaching the youth in terms of proper diet, nutrition, and basically encouraging them to exercise and to get out and to basically explore the world and break out of sweat and to stress their heart. So to exercise. So the thing is that those are the reasons why I feel that that I wanted to pass this message and really wanted to work on the book, because if we can address the youth, we really can make a big impact on the next generation.
Yeah, and I think that the conventional medical establishment, or at least the drug companies and the junk food companies, have the same idea in mind. I think they started way ahead of us, where they realize if they get kids hooked on drugs, vaccines, junk food, that they'll have a customer for life. And so they really do target the youth, because once these habits are formed, it's harder to break. I have the exceptional parent who's really into healthy food. I had one yesterday, brought her little daughter in, and they only eat organic food. They actually go to farmers to get the produce. They grow a lot of the stuff their own. They occasionally eat beef, but they get it organically grown from a local farmer. The one basically even makes tortillas from scratch from genetically modified free corn. So she's really into it, and her kids are being raised this way. They're not getting vaccines, but that's the exception. Most parents lead an unhealthy lifestyle themselves. I remember I was at Walmart a couple years ago trying to buy rock salt for the snow, which you don't have that problem down there in Orlando. And the woman in front of me had these huge bottles of soda pop, about a dozen of them. And so I said to her as she was checking out, this stuff's very bad for you, and it leaches out minerals. It'll rot your teeth. It'll rot your bones, cause muscle cramps, all kinds of problems. And she said, I recognize your voice. Aren't you the doctor that's on radio? I said, yeah. She said, oh, I listen to you all the time. I said, but you're not implementing. You're buying this stuff. You ought to tell the cashier you don't want it and let them take it back. She said, well, I'll take it this one last time. I'm telling you, Dr. Lee, she had maybe 8 or 10 of these huge 2-liter bottles. So, unfortunately, this is the model, this is the example that these children have. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you before we get into the contents of the book, in the back of the book, you talk about your close friend, Dr. Sanjay Banerjee. And I find this rather shocking. I guess he was a good friend of yours. You trained together in residency or whatever. And he died at the age of 47, and it said that he was a smoker. Now, I realize you don't want to put too many concepts in a book. Smoking is not mentioned here, which, of course, is a major factor in heart disease. What exactly was Dr. Sanjay Banerjee's problem that he died at the age of 47? Do you think it was preventable? And if he was very knowledgeable, why did he do this to himself?
Well, Sanjay Banerjee is a very close friend of mine, and he actually had a kidney problem that required a kidney transplant during medical school, and actually had to take a year off to get a kidney transplant. But before getting his kidney transplant, he was addicted to smoking, and he would try to quit, but he just couldn't quit. And the years of being on anti-rejection medications, just after the kidney transplant, and the history of smoking, and actually wasn't a good combination. So, yes, it could have been preventable. He could have lived a little longer, but it's a path he chose. And the thing is that part of my book I mentioned is you have to choose a path. You want to choose a path of healthy living or path of least resistance, where it tastes good, but it's not good for the body. Yes, and then I will talk later down the road about the concept of smoking if I ever get to the book, Your Amazing Lung or something like that.
Yeah, I realize that you want to keep it simple and only have a few basic concepts that you repeat numerous times. And what I found is the attention span is very short, not only among children but among adults, and that I have to repeat myself very often, frequently, because people ask me questions that I already answered 2 or 3 sentences before. It happens on radio, and it happens in my private consults where I see patients in the office. So I think it's good that you just chose a few basic concepts in this book and repeat them again and again. One is about exercise. One is about avoiding junk food and candy and sugar. And then the third one is eating fruits and vegetables. And so that's the main thrust of the book, has 3 basic ideas that I think children or adults can wrap their minds around and implement. So if we gave them 20 things, maybe it'd be too many things. But 3 things, they can get their mind around it. Now, of course, there are many other factors, many other factors affecting heart disease, like trans fats, which I think aren't covered here. And I guess the reason is that you figured you have to focus on what you felt was the most important thing, that these kids were eating all this synthetic food, very high in sugar, and so you had to focus on that because this is a major part of their diet. I know that the president's wife has tried to institute better eating in the public schools, and I know here in Pittsburgh they adopted it, and they had a picture the first day of school a couple years ago with students going to the garbage can to clean out their tray before they put the trays away, and they were throwing away all the vegetables because, unfortunately, for a lot of kids, vegetables are a foreign object. They've actually never seen a vegetable. Their parents are raising them in the wrong way where they're not eating healthfully, and I know you emphasized that. So was that the thinking in the book, that you want to stick to a few basic concepts that would have a major impact?
You're correct, Dr. Weiner. I just wanted to keep 3 simple secrets, or 3 simple concepts. And I think the 3 most important thing for me was, and it still is number 1 is you have to huff, puff, and sweat. You have to go out and exercise. And if you're not sweating, you're not exercising hard enough. Number 2 is you have to eat less sugar. It's okay to have a little sugar, but if you have too much sugar in your diet, it's going to cause that insulin to spike and cause many problems, especially developing plaque, and eventually the plaque can grow and lead to a heart attack. And the third thing is we have to have more vegetables in our diet, and I really think that this book opens the discussion to to healthy eating styles. And I really think that as a family, they can sit down and say, look, how can we do better? And in the book, there's an example of a nice green smoothie that kids can drink, or families or parents can drink. And there's a lot of great recipes that's out there that I actually include in my second book, Your Best Investment, that has a green smoothie section. But the thing is that I really believe that if you keep the concept simple, I can list like 10 other more facts that you can do to have a healthy heart. But if you list the top 3, I believe that as a society, kids don't exercise enough. Number 2, we have to eat less sugar because we're just addicted to it as a country. And number 3, we have to basically have more vegetables and more fiber and fruit in our diet. So that's really the main concept of the book. And I'm really touched with this one young girl who's this book is intended for 3rd grade to about 6th grade level. But she was a 1st grader, and she couldn't read all the words. Her mother helped read the book with her in my office. And later, her mother came back to see me about 2 weeks later and said, my daughter she loved to eat sugar, and every time I told her, eat less, she would kind of ignore me because kids kind of ignore parents. But now, if there's a book out there that the kids can read and they can see what's going to happen, it's a totally different educational system. Because if a parent says, don't do this, they tend to do it anyway. But what's really exciting is this little girl now telling her friends, don't eat that candy bar because it's not good for your heart. And she's already spreading the message. So if we start at a young age, I really think that we're going to really make a big difference in terms of having a healthy society and healthy Americans down the road.
Well, that's terrific. And I know you're trying to use various marketing avenues to get the message out. Now, the second book that you referred to,
Your Best
Investment,
Secrets.
What exactly is in that? And I guess that is geared towards adults. I know you sent me a review copy some months ago.
Yeah, that book, Your Best Investment, Secrets to a Healthy Body and Mind, actually is all about the dangers of eating too much sugar, how our total food system is messed up, the standard American diet, and how we're just becoming a fatter country. And the thing is that there's too much corn in our diet, too much sugar in our diet, and genetically modified foods. and that we just have to eat healthier. And there's at the back of the book is that there's two nutritionists who wrote two different meal plans. So I think this is the first book that you get two different nutritionists who gives you a total of 4 months of healthy eating, and from breakfast, lunch, and to your evening meal. And you can choose from the first nutritionist, Allison Gordon, who's from California, or the second one from Laura Gavin, who's a friend of mine that from Winter Haven, Florida. So there's two different styles of recipes or menus to follow, and it's actually there's a smoothie section, so if people want to try some new formulas or new smoothies, they can check out the book called Your Best Investment.
Now, I want to mention that you're listening to Dr. Edwin Lee. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. James Weiner. We have this program 31 hours a week on 4 different stations. I'm director of the Weiner Wellness Center, WINER Wellness Center, which will be extending the recent sale prices. We're not going to have the food. We're not going to have the speakers, but we're going to extend the sale prices through a couple days before Christmas, through December 23rd, and then we're going to close the office for the holiday between the 24th of December and the 2nd of January. So if you want more information on that, you can go online at drjamesweiner.com or a Facebook page, Weiner Wellness Center, or you can call our office at 412-922-WELL. What I have to say about Dr. Lee is he lives the part. I'm not going to give away your age, but I think you're somewhere in your 40s. You run marathons. You're very thin and trim. You're very fit yourself. I don't know about your eating habits, but I assume they're exemplary because the way you look much younger than your age, and you're very physically fit. And something I've noticed when I go to these health conventions where there are doctors, not all of them look the part. You look the part because you're actually walking the talk. So I think you're a great role model, and if you do speak in front of children or you're speaking in front of professionals, they look at you and they realize, oh, this guy actually probably follows what he's talking about, because I know in years past when I used to go to health conventions and put them on myself, very often I would see the speakers during the lunch break eating all kinds of stuff that they had just railed against in their talk. So I know that you're walking the talk. What is your exercise regimen, for example?
I like to swim, so I belong to the master swim team. So if I swim 2 times a week in the morning time, I'm happy. The other time of the week is I've reduced my running mileage, so I'm just keep it short. So lately I've been running some 5Ks with my 10-year-old son. He just started doing that, and he really loves it. So we just ran Saturday, this past weekend, his second 5K. So I'll do 3 or 4 miles, maybe 3 times a week. And then I like to lift a little weights, keep the muscles strong, and do little core workouts. And if I have a little free time, I like to actually do some golfing. So I just do a little cardio, little strength training, and I enjoy hiking. And we're going to go on this holiday a ski trip. So. Love to hike. I just got back from the Appalachian Trail, the first part in Maine, and there's a mountain called Mount Katahdin. And
I think isn't that the highest mountain in the east?
No, actually the highest in Maine, but Mount Washington I think is the highest. But it was a beautiful climb there, beautiful weather. It's amazing. So. I think the best part is to go out and explore nature and to have fun and see how beautiful this world is.
Well, you're setting a great example for your kids, and I think that this book is The Amazing Heart is an amazing book. I look forward to the other series. The artwork, I think, is splendid. I think, when I see artwork for kids, I want to see, are kids actually going to be able to relate to this artwork? And I think that kids will really enjoy it. But as I say, it's applicable to adults. It's very easy to read. I think an adult could read this book in about 15 minutes. And the visuals really help to underscore the message of what's there. Like you have the seesaw and how the seesaw gets broken when you're eating too much stuff. And you repeat several times, which I think is critical for education, those 3 points of exercise, avoiding the sugary foods, and eating produce. And then, of course, you do have that smoothie recipe, as you said. And if they go to the adult book, Your Best Investment, then a large part of that book is recipe. So, people that are motivated, once they're motivated, they're going to want to know how to do this. Now, of course, Nutritional Frontiers has come out with the greens, reds, purples, and oranges, and that can be a time saver. I don't say it's necessarily a substitute for blending up a fresh smoothie with fruit and vegetables, but if someone's on the go, a friend of mine who has 2 different jobs, and he just asked me the other day, he said, I live alone, I skip breakfast. Well, of course, that's a bad idea. I said, here's what you do. You get some of our super shake, get some of the greens, reds, purples, throw it together. Here's a shaker cup. You don't even need a blender because it can dissolve very readily with some water or almond milk or something in our shaker cup. And, in a minute or two, you can end up making something that's very healthy that gives you the nutrients. So that's why we developed those powders for people that don't even want to take the time out to blend up, because, blending might take 2 minutes or something, and Americans, unfortunately, don't put in the effort, which they have to put in, to take care of themselves. So we do have those powders. I think it's a great addition. And actually, that's how I start my day. As you know, I've lost a lot of weight, and that was one of the ways I did it. I used to skip breakfast, which then end up slowing down your metabolism. So I started doing the super shake and the reds, the purples, the greens. Occasionally I'll throw in the oranges, and that gets me started in the day. And then when I have time, for example, someone brought in a whole bunch of organic vegetables. I juice them. I have several different types of juicers here, and I also do have a blender. And I think if kids could get involved making the food. I remember when I was a kid, we had a cook, and I would help her make the food. Unfortunately, a lot of the food she made wasn't very healthy. She was really into making pies and cakes with Crisco, trans fats. People didn't know any better in the 50s. And, of course, a lot of sugar thrown in there. And then I used to love to lick the batter. But I think if parents start getting into it, even if it's just smoothies like you suggest, and the kids start doing it themselves, then they'll probably end up, they come home from school, maybe they'll make themselves a smoothie even if the parents aren't around. So I think that's a great idea to try to get the kids involved. And obviously we have to change their eating habits when they're young, because otherwise people will tell me, oh, I've been eating this way my whole life, it's hard to change. And I try to tell them this phrase that Henry Ford often said, if you think you can or cannot, you're right. But I realize if you're used to the emotional attachment to food, which is another whole issue, where maybe kids got milk and cookies before bedtime or something, it's not just a physical habit, but there's some emotional overlay there that makes them think of warm fuzzies with their parents. So they need to get into this, and then they'll start thinking about healthy food being a part of the emotional bond they had with their family. And so what other titles are you planning to come out with besides The Amazing Heart?
Well, the second one is called Your Awesome Brain, and we're still working on the basically the format, and we're keep rewriting the book. We kind of want to do more of a story like book, so it's a little more. We're almost there. We just try to wrinkle out all these little other issues, but it should. I think down the 2014 we'll have it out sometime in 2014. So.
Well, this is an important thing because so many kids are diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and my experience is it's food allergies and junk food. These kids' brains cannot function right with all the sugar, the colorings, flavorings, additives, the lack of vitamins and minerals, because they're not eating fruits and vegetables. As I said, here in Pittsburgh, they had that classic picture of the kids dumping the stuff in the trash can. So much for Mrs. Obama's efforts, because they didn't know what they'd never eaten that food, so it was very strange to them. And so I would suggest maybe consider having something about attention deficit hyperactivity in there, because this is a major problem where these kids are all spaced out, or they're nervous. They have a low attention span. Some of them have trouble sleeping at night. They're all wired up. And I know I had this problem. When I was in school, unfortunately, between the cook that made all the pastries and everything and having a number of pastry shops, bakery shops within walking distance of our house, we had a ton of pastry in the house constantly. And also, I drank a lot of milk, which I think I probably was allergic to. I used to have a lot of mucus, and I think that can affect the attention, especially American milk is so adulterated with chemicals and hormones and antibiotics and everything. And so I would find that we'd get a test back in school, and I'd missed a bunch of questions because I hadn't followed the directions correctly. And then I'd raise my hand and say, wait a minute, you didn't say that. And the teacher would say, class, did I say that? And everyone would say, yes, Jim. She said that. Or I'd read a book, and then I'd notice after about 5 pages that I think my eyes were mechanically following the words, but my brain was not engaged, and I had no idea what I'd read. So I think I had this problem when I was a kid. They didn't have the label then. Unfortunately, they didn't have the drugs like Ritalin, Concerta, and all these other drugs they load these kids up with. And I think that the medical establishment, especially the drug companies, are focusing on what they consider an underserved market, which is young children. They got them loaded up with 81 vaccines. They've got the senior citizens and people in my group loaded up with drugs. They're starting to move towards middle-aged people, whether or not they have health problems. They're suggesting now that half the population ought to be on cholesterol medication as a preventive rather than improving their diet. You know, we look at the country of France, they consume almost no statin cholesterol medications, and yet they have far less heart disease than us because they have a different diet. And now they're focusing on the children to load them up with medications. I have an article that was in the paper where a cardiologist was suggesting that children by the age of 10 should be on statin medication. I mean, this is very disturbing that they want to load up these children, and a lot of them already are loaded up with antacids and asthma inhalers and you name it. So I think what you're doing is fabulous, and the brain, they need to understand if they're going to be able to function well in society or in school, that their brain function is going to be related to what they're consuming. And I imagine that's a major point that you're going to make, correct?
Correct. There's only so much in the children's book that you could put in, but maybe I'll do like Brain Part 1, Brain Part 2, Brain Part 3, because there's so many interesting things about the brain that you can talk about. And so I'm not going to, I'll just leave it there, but just want to tell you that for Your Amazing Heart, there are 2 versions of the book. One's a printed version that you can probably get through Dr. Weiner's office or through my office. But it will be out on Amazon on February 18th. And the second one, the e-book version, is on Apple iTunes, and you need basically an iPad to view the book. But what's interesting is kids with ADD or ADHD, I've done a beta test on these kids, and the e-book version, they just love it because there's 20 seconds of video animation with each page. It's interactive. They have to push the play button after they read, and out comes a little video, which you can't do in a book, printed book, but they can do on the e-book version. And it's amazing how kids can sit through from first page to the very end, and they actually understand what the whole book's about, because I think the videos kind of really helps. It grabs their attention. So.
Yeah, was that available right now? They can go on
They can
iTunes?
go on Apple iTunes and type in Your Amazing Heart, and you can see the book there. You have to have an iPad to view it. So.
Okay, I don't have one, but I know people who do, so we're going to have to check that out because that sounds very exciting, because this is playing right into what they're used to. They're used to all this entertainment, this electronic entertainment. I have so many kids that come in with these little screens that they're watching videos, and so you have to get them where they're at. This is not like when I was a kid when we just read printed books and a lot of them weren't even illustrated. And you know, a lot of people are visual learners, and I think that more and more people are becoming more visual, which is probably a good thing. I used to teach art history also, and maybe people are starting to use their eyes better. But being as it may, you're taking advantage of the latest technology. Apple iTunes, type in Your Amazing Heart. And is it free, or do they have to pay a fee for that?
There's a fee. It's $7.99.
Okay, and then once they pay it, they can watch it countless times, I guess, right?
Exactly. It downloads to their iPad, and they can watch it 1,000 times.
Now, how does a child pay for it? I guess they're going to have the parent's credit card.
Yeah, the parents have to basically log in. They have to have an Apple iTunes account, and the parents have to pay for it. But it makes a wonderful gift. So whether it's a Christmas gift or a gift down the road. I'm some of my patients said they would say, wouldn't every parent give this book to their child? The gift of a healthy heart. I mean, wouldn't you want to educate your child in terms of living healthier? And so it's actually it's a very, I think, a wonderful gift to give to whether your grandkids or to your nephews or to nieces, and also it's, I think, a great book to have in every school system too. My kids' school, they go to a public school in Orlando called Bay Meadows Elementary, and they just purchased a series of books for their upcoming spring semester on health. And the physical education teacher named Brent, he actually is really into these ideas and trying to have them be much, much healthier and to basically ingrain these concepts when they're young. So if there's any schools out there in Pittsburgh that's interested or outside the tri-state area, please contact me.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Many years ago, probably 35, 40 years ago, I spoke for some health coaches, gym coaches at public schools around the region here. And I really haven't done any of that in many, many years. They were trying to implement that back then. And of course, the need is even greater now because I think the kids are fatter now. I think they're eating worse food now. A lot of kids are raised by single parents who are working. Even if they have two parents, both of them very often are working. And so they get, ingrained in this habit of just eating junk food. The first thing is that they shouldn't even have this stuff accessible in the house. But, if they're educated, some of them are going to make the right choices, but they need to have the education. Otherwise, they're going to do what these kids in Pittsburgh were doing, which is just dumping the fruit and vegetables into the garbage can. Right. I think that's terrific. Now, another thing that I'd really like to see you do is a DVD. We have a lot of educational DVDs. They've proven very, very useful. They're great gifts for the holidays because someone will get it as a gift, and then they'll pass it around to a lot of their friends and family members. I think you ought to have a DVD of these ideas. Maybe the thing that you have on the iTunes, the Apple iTunes, you could have a DVD format.
Yeah, instead of a DVD format, it's a...
Yeah, because that's one more, way to market these ideas. And then we could have that in the office along with the book for people who want to get it. And as I say, I think this is, I haven't seen the animated version, but just the printed version is so entertaining that it kept my interest, even though it's geared towards 3rd to 6th graders. And here I am, a senior citizen on Medicare and Social Security. Maybe I'm reverting back, but I think it's so well done that adults will not feel patronized. It's not childish, it's just childlike. And the colors are very vibrant. The artwork, I have an art background, as I said. The artwork is really beautiful and kind of whimsical and fun and entertaining and varied. And it really makes the point. And the graphics really are in harmony with the written text that you're trying to get across. So I think it's very, very useful. Even talk about blood pressure there and pulse, things that maybe kids have had done to them. and they don't know what it is. I mean, they have this cuff put around their arm, and they don't know what the doctor's doing, or someone's feeling their wrist for their pulse, and they don't understand. You actually explain a few simple diagnostic tests that we in the health field use to try to determine people's heart health. So it's a fantastic book, Your Amazing Heart. Now, I thought we ought to touch a couple minutes on your first book, which I think is more endocrinology based. Maybe you can talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. Briefly, the first book's called Feel Good, Look Younger, Reversing Tiredness Through Hormonal Balance. And as an endocrinologist that's board certified and went through conventional medicine, and I'm also, quote, taking special courses in being, quote, certified in age management. I actually show both sides of the argument why conventional endocrine, this is what their thoughts are about these certain hormones, like using growth hormone or using testosterone or using estrogen. And I show the other side of the argument with the age management side, showing that it's beneficial. So one side says there's not enough data, it may not be beneficial. The other side says it is beneficial. So I actually show the medical data that's out there. There are some controversial issues on some of these hormones, but I go through all the hormones that we can clinically use. And I really believe if you optimize your hormones, you have good nutrition, you detox, you can basically have a really success in terms of great optimal health. You can actually live longer, healthier, and the key, I really believe, is you have to basically balance. You have to get your hormones balanced. You have to also basically have great nutrition, and you got to also have you got to detox. So that's kind of the main concept in that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you agree with some other physicians that there's such a sea of xenoestrogens that a lot of us, including men, have too much estrogen in our bodies, maybe from the food and the pesticides, et cetera?
Yeah, I truly agree. I've just saw a soldier that came back from Afghanistan, and he has such low testosterone, and we're not quite sure exactly why he had low testosterone, but he said that the bottled water that was given to them, they would actually drop crates of these bottled water in the desert, and it would just sit and cook. And I'm sure all the BPA would be just melting and leaching into this bottled water.
So the chemicals from the plastic, especially at that high temperature, getting into the water.
He goes, it doesn't even taste like water. It tastes so bad. And anyway, his testosterone level was extremely low. It was under 100, and he's actually feeling much, much better now. But not quite sure, was it from the bottled water sitting in the desert that he was drinking. But yeah, I think there's a lot of environmental toxins that, even though I'm I love to study this. There's so much that I don't even know that's out there. There are other new chemicals that may be affecting on hormone production. So, but we live in a toxic world, and that's why it's important to do liver cleanses.
Yeah, that's why Nutritional Frontiers, we came out with the Live Clear, and now we've improved to the Live Clear 2. And actually, the different products, I tell some people they can take both. Unfortunately, we got the best government money can buy. I talk about that frequently, that we do not have a government that is responsive to the needs of the people, but basically responsive to the huge corporations that fund their campaigns to get elected. And so trans fats are rampant in the United States. They're illegal in France. Genetically modified food, rampant. It's not even labeled. Illegal in France. We've got so much going on in this country that people aren't aware of. I'll tell you, there's a wonderful video that I learned about. You may want to watch if you haven't watched it on YouTube, called Genetic Roulette. And it really gets into, for example, like attention deficit and genetic roulette, since you're focusing on children now. It's called Genetic Roulette on YouTube. It costs nothing to watch it. There's another video that I promote that's on YouTube called Cancer, the Forbidden Cures, Cancer, the Forbidden Cures, and it talks about various natural approaches that have been successful in cancer that are being ignored by the conventional medical establishment because they're not very profitable. So we have this medical system that is broken. We haven't gotten into that because that's not really the focus of your books. But it is one more way that people are being kept from this information, one more way they're being reinforced into the medical model of ignoring responsibility for their own health and then relying passively on doctors and drugs and surgeries to cure their problems. And, of course, there is a place for medication, there's a place for surgery, but it's not a substitute for a healthy lifestyle. And I think it's fabulous that you have started a series of books. I'm interested in seeing the brain one, and also I'm going to get a hold of an iPad somewhere so I can watch the iTunes. Now, I do have 2 Macs. Can I watch them on the Apple desktops, the iTunes thing?
You may be able to, but I think that's really designed for the Apple iPad.
iPads, okay. Well, friends of mine have iPads, so I'm going to have to say I'll pay the $7.95 so I can watch the video version. And do think about DVDs, because I think that'd be one more avenue, that we could market it. You could market it through Amazon. You can market it through retail stores like ours that we have in the health clinic. If you can get that together, if there's no copyright problems, I'd love to see that in the future. Well, Dr. Lee, I look forward to seeing you again. I'm sorry you won't be in Las Vegas at this upcoming conference, but I know I see you in Orlando, and actually you've done a favor for me. I won't mention what it is, and so I'll probably be seeing you in a couple of weeks anyhow.
Right. So I'm looking forward to meeting you. And again, if they want to contact me, my office phone number is 407-363-9665, and my website is www.dredwinlee.com.
Okay, well, I appreciate you getting on today, folks. We want to have a final reminder. We want to call our office, 412-922-WELL, our website, drjamesweiner.com, our Facebook page, Weiner Wellness Center. Thanks for listening. God bless you.